Former President Donald Trump facing legal troubles once again as he's been indicted for allegedly interfering in the 2020 election. We speak with an expert who specializes in RICO cases and how to defend them. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. The legal issues for former President Trump persist. In Georgia, he and 18 other co-defendants are facing charges for allegedly trying to overturn the 2020 election results in that state. Mr. Trump is charged with 13 counts, including racketeering. The indictment alleging that he led a, quote, criminal organization that also included those 18 co-defendants, as well as other co-conspirators in the plot to overturn his loss in that state. This is all coming Monday. This coming Monday, Donald Trump expected to reveal a report that details election fraud in the state. And this Friday, he's expected to surrender to authorities in Georgia. Here's a quick look at some of the other probes going against the former president right now. He's already been indicted on charges that he mishandled top secret documents at his Florida estate. He's also facing conspiracy charges as part of a violent riot that happened at the Capitol in Washington on January 6th. And here in New York State, he's facing charges of falsifying business records as part of an alleged hush money payment or scheme to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. Now, returning to the indictment in Georgia, because the former president is facing charges as part of what the AG calls a criminal organization, we're joined now by Paul Derenetian, an attorney with experience defending RICO cases like this. You've defended them all over the years. And explain, first of all, people who they hear RICO, they think of Tony Soprano and the mob. Yeah. Were those laws brought about?
That's right. That was the origin of RICO laws. In fact, Rudy Giuliani, one of the defendants in this case, exploited RICO laws tremendously. But they expanded over time to include legitimate organizations, the Parking Bureau in New York City, a police department. So it has really expanded and is a very broad statute now.
And by definition, what is it saying? This wasn't just one person who decided to do something wrong. This person had a whole team of people working different ways.
That's correct. And the part of the conspiracy, you have to prove a certain number of acts usually. And again, only certain acts can be part of a RICO conspiracy. But nowadays, it's very broad, but it's also a challenge for a prosecutor.
Were you surprised how many people were wrapped up in this thing, like 18 different people with the president? My first thought, too, was some of them were lawyers. I thought, aren't lawyers just paid to give their advice and give legal advice? How do they get pulled into this?
Two really important points there, John, in your question. Number one, the number. 18, 19 people as defendants, that's a lot. I mean, this is the Pizza Connection trial from the 70s. I mean, is there a courtroom large enough in this area that could accommodate that number of defendants? Which tells you it's a bit unwieldy, both legally as well as practically. But the other issue you're talking about is the role of the lawyers, to see so many lawyers as defendants, and they are defendants because of the positions they were advocating on behalf of their client. Now, that's Mr. Trump's defense also. I was relying on what these lawyers said. It may have been wrong, it may have been bad, but that's one of the challenging and interesting aspects of this whole case.
Well, is this jury going to have to parse whether a lawyer just gave bad advice or deliberately was trying to break a law? That's a tough one to figure out.
That's exactly right. I think that's going to be one of the challenges. How legitimate was that belief? How did you know that it was wrong and violating a law? Now, there's certain things like asking a witness to lie, which is part of that RICO, a lawyer can't do. You can't ever ask someone to lie, for example. So, I mean, there's clear limits, but I think this is going to test the limits of what's legitimate legal advice for lawyers.
We heard the phone call already, and it's amazing how much stuff comes out ahead of trials these days in the public and in the media about him saying, I just need this many votes. Is that the smoking gun that the prosecutors think it is, or does that cut both ways?
Well, how many times do you think election lawyers have heard their clients say, we need X number of votes to turn the election around? I mean, this state has seen years and years of election litigation where that was the issue. Could you find enough votes to turn it around? I think by itself, in a vacuum, it isn't particularly problematic. The question is the context. It's like asking you to drive me to the bank. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it's the whole purpose of it is to rob the bank, there's a problem.
Right, and I'd get my own lawyer, and he's going to argue that I didn't know you were going to rob the bank.
Exactly.
I thought you were going into to get your free toaster or something. Do you think all these defendants get their own lawyers, or is this where one team represents all of them at once?
Well, they're going to have separate lawyers. The issue is who's going to pay for them. The Trump organization, the Trump campaign has financed most defendants who've asked for it so far. But with 19, 4 trials, it gets to be a lot. And the question will be, will it, quote, tax the campaign also? Will the resources be there? Then the question is there conflict in doing that? And what happens is judges intervene to question to make sure that those lawyers are acting independently. So that's another legal issue that this type of funding of defense counsel will bring into the case.
Do you think the goal here, and you can't get inside of the prosecutor's head, but is to get 5, 6, 8 people to flip and take some kind of immunity and then say Donald Trump knew what he was doing was wrong, he did it anyway? Or
that's typically the purpose of bringing multiple defendants, and especially 1819. You're hoping that someone is going to flip and become your witness in the case. So I don't think we have to really guess too much at that. I think that's very clearly one of the hopes there, because some of these individuals are also somewhat peripheral to the whole scheme and racketeering conspiracy.
The timing of this, I mean, forgetting the timing of it with the politics of it all in an election next year, but one of the criticisms I've heard from his lawyers is, you guys took 2.5 years to investigate this. Now you want a speedy trial within 6 months. That's insane. You've got to give us a lot of time to prepare, especially with all these different defendants. Is that a fair argument for them to make, that we can't rush into this thing?
Well, number one, it's a logical argument to say, why did it take 2.5 years? I think there may be reasons for it, but it does seem coincidental that all 4 of them come out just during the campaign time. The more important argument, though, is what you said, John, about it takes time. I mean, RICO cases are not simple. There's a myriad of issues, including people like Mark Meadows, a federal official, making a motion to say this should be in federal court, because you can't prosecute federal officials in the course of their duties in a state proceeding. Now, the question is, was this part of his duties? But a judge has to sort through that. You have multiple people that have that motion to make. You have 19 people that are going to say, I want a separate trial. I want a motion for severance. So there's a tremendous amount of legal issues that have to be addressed, which means it's going to take time. You don't see RICO cases rush to trial in a few months ordinarily.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Why isn't this in federal court? It's in state court. Can the feds come in and Bigfoot this and just take it away?
They could have. In fact, the special prosecutor, Mr. Smith, could have done a RICO case. He could have charged the lawyers. Why didn't he? And I think he had his tactical reasons for not charging Giuliani and other attorneys. But you wonder, is he upset that the Atlanta prosecutor did? Because maybe he was hoping to bring them in without indicting them, that was, quote, an enticement. We haven't indicted you. Come on in before you do get indictment. He's lost that leverage, though, because of the Atlantic prosecutor.
Yeah, I thought I heard at least one of them, and the name escapes me now, was given immunity at the federal level, but got indicted at the state level. I'd be on my phone, my lawyer, going, what's going on here?
That conversation has happened before between clients and attorneys, and the answer is they're different systems. The federal can't bind the state can't bind the federal unless they coordinate, and obviously they did not. And that goes back to what I said a second ago. How much coordination was there? Is this what Jack Smith really wanted, to see all these individuals indicted that he may have wanted as witnesses in his case, but he too could have brought a RICO charge?
Last 30 seconds, do you see any of this getting resolved before the election, or with 4 different indictments now and different charges, can his lawyers just go to each court and say, I can't possibly fight 4 wars at once, you have to give me time?
You can't fight 4 wars at once. The problem is, in the legal system, we don't have an air traffic control system. When you have 4 cases in different jurisdictions, it's going to be difficult to resolve one case, let alone 4 cases in the next year.
Does any of this end up in the Supreme Court, you think?
Absolutely. There's going to be issues that wind up in the Supreme Court.
All right, Paul, thanks for coming in and talking to us. Interesting stuff.
My pleasure.
We'll have you back as it all starts to play out.
Thank you.
Telecommunications company Zoom recently walking back a policy of collecting the customer's data without their consent. When we come back, we'll speak with an expert on artificial intelligence, on how the data collection will impact the building of the AI. And the real question, is your data even safe? If you have any comments or questions or ideas for us, let us know. Email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, which is formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. We are continuing to monitor the situation surrounding artificial intelligence. Zoom is now walking back a policy of using customer data to train their AI. The policy walk back only coming after an online outcry over the inability of customers to opt out of the collection. Zoom's new policy that it will seek additional consent before using user-generated data, such as video or audio. However, other information, including how users engage with the software, as well as program errors, that can be used. The back and forth coming as lawmakers continue to push to learn more and regulate AI. As we continue to dig into how AI legislation and data collection interact, we're pleased to be joined now once again by an AI expert, Levi Newland, Senior Vice President of Digital Marketing at the Martin Group. Levi, thanks again for joining us on the show.
Happy to join you.
I'll jump off with the Zoom thing and then putting something out and then pulling it back. Do you know much about that? What was the issue there? Just the kind of data they were collecting?
Yeah, so Zoom kind of, like a lot of companies, had introduced some new AI features that would allow them to, provide a better user experience for people who are using the Zoom meeting application. However, they updated their terms and conditions without a lot of fanfare and introduced these new features. And as people kind of started to pay attention to these new terms, they realized that what Zoom was saying they could do with your data and information seemed a lot broader than most people wanted to agree to. So with that attention came a lot of blowback.
Is the issue here how they're using the data? I mean, most people say, well, look, if you're searching for beach chairs, we may want to collect that data and then steer some advertising towards you with some great beach chairs. It's win-win, but it's not always that simple, is it?
Correct. Zoom was intending to use this data for AI models to just provide a better meeting experience, to do things like after a meeting, provide an automatic transcription or tell you a bit more about the topics that were discussed during the meeting. Now, while that can be helpful, a lot of people took issue with the fact that they weren't given the option as to whether or not they were going to be providing their data or whether their data was just going to be taken without their consent.
When we sign on to a lot of these apps, there's always somewhere in the very beginning, usually the first moment you're uploading this stuff, there might be a little box you got to check the rules and terms. And I don't know, you probably read these things. 99.9% of people don't. Should they be reading these little things that they're agreeing to?
I think it's important to kind of take a deeper look at a lot of these things before you're agreeing to it. There's likely also places online you could be searching where might dig a little bit deeper into what can be done with that prospective data that you might be providing or other information. That said, a lot of these companies are writing their terms in a way that gives them broad control to do what they want to do, not only to provide more value to them as a company, but also to avoid potential litigation or anything like that in the future by, flagging the fact that you agreed to it. They have a lot more freedom to kind of go where they want to with the information they collect.
Is it naive for us to think when we go on any app, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, the new Twitter, X, well, it's free. It's free to me. It costs me nothing. But in a way, you are paying with yourself and your own information, your own data, and the choices you make and the things you click on, right?
It is definitely an exchange. You are saying, I'm going to use this free service, and then this company is using that data and information not only to further its efforts, potentially sell to third parties, as well as serve advertisements in a way that will hopefully make you kind of buy into particular products, which just kind of keeps that cycle moving. And it is something you have to consider. If you are paying into something that doesn't have a lot of privacy protection, or if you are using something for free, generally won't have a lot of privacy protections. But if you're paying into something, you likely have a lot more control over what happens with your information and what they can do with it once they have it.
Just recently, I saw something pop up that maybe the AI or the app thought I might have been interested in, and I sort of did, and I watched about 2 minutes of it. But boy, the next 24 hours, every time I went on that app, it was giving me similar things up, down that lane, if it was a highway, trying to feed into, oh, he was interested in this, let's give him a lot more of this. And I realized I'd watched about 4 or 5 more of these things, and now I've just burned a half hour of my day on this app. Is that the goal here sometimes with AI, to sort of, I don't want to manipulate, might not be the right word, but they'll say we're giving you what you liked, but in a way, I'm also spending more time on the app.
Yeah, there's a balance of these AI recommendations trying to give you most relevancy that keeps you sticky within the application. Like TikTok is a great example. Their algorithm is a big part of what makes it successful, both for the users and for them as a company. They show you what you want to be seeing. They also introduce things like showing you content you don't want to see so that you'll move past it, but stay engaged in everything that you're being presented. So it is definitely something that companies are using a lot of machine learning and AI models to kind of recommend the right kind of content to keep you sticky, because that makes you more valuable to them over the long term.
I'm getting the feeling with AI, it's a little bit like a hammer. I can take a hammer and build a house and do something good, or you can whack somebody on the head with it and hurt them, which is a bad use of a hammer. Is there a real concern now? I know Congress is looking at legislating AI in some way, because you're going down this lane, especially with kids in school, just feeding information into a computer and AI spits out your paper for you. Is that a real concern? Is the AI ahead of our legislation and kind of being able to control it?
Yeah, I think that the two biggest concerns are the fact that AI is only as good as the amount of data or the quality of the data that goes into it. So if you have bad information going in, bad information will kind of come out. ChatGPT that's in use right now still has an old data set going back to like 2021. So if you're asking it for modern stats or data, you're not going to get accurate information out the other end. Secondly, there's not a lot of transparency as to what the data sources are for a lot of these AI models, or what they're doing to kind of measure what you're doing or utilize your information. So I think from a legislation standpoint, a lot of it's going to come down to disclosure and making sure that there's a lot of transparency in how these AI tools work, so that you are more informed as an individual as to how you are then using it to make sure you're not doing anything with it that could be considered harmful, or dangerous, or just contrary to kind of what you were hoping for in the first place.
This question may be a little bit out there. We've seen so many movies where AI becomes this person you can talk to, a robot you can talk to, companionship. There's no replacing the human element in anything, correct? I mean, I could see this going down the road of a lot of lonely people out there where they feel like they have a friend with AI who, you have Alexa, she talks back to you. I'm not alone in the house anymore.
Yeah, right now, if you consider, more of the negative side of that things, there's a lot of folks out there that use, social engineering to scam people, create fake relationships with somebody to help get money out of them. It happens a lot with celebrities a lot now online, where somebody thinks that they're talking to a celebrity for months and months, and then they solicit money from this person, which is really horrible that that's happening. And AI tools could potentially help some of these scammers do certain things at scale, because it can get to that level of realism. And that's likely one of the first places that information is going to go, or these techniques are going to go, is towards nefarious uses instead of something that's probably going to be positive. That said, there is some definite positive opportunities for AI to kind of help engage with people and help provide a better experience, whether that's on social networks or even in our healthcare industries, to just kind of move people forward and give them the support that they need.
So with the last 20 seconds, is the bottom line here, AI can be great if it's used correctly?
That's correct. We're very much in the early stages of this entire AI revolution, and I think there's room for a lot of interpretation and a lot of structure that needs to be put into place to make sure that what we're doing with AI is really going to help us moving forward and not have a larger negative effect.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Levi Newland from the Martin Group, thanks for coming on today. Interesting stuff. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The New York National Guard on the ground in some New York counties right now, how members are providing support in the asylum seeker situation. If you have a comment or story idea, please let us know about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, which was formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. As we continue to track concerns from communities housing asylum seekers in New York State, the National Guard now being mobilized to assist in some of those areas. The state deploying over 100 National Guard personnel to shelter sites in Monroe and Erie counties in western New York, and over 1,000 are going to sites down in New York City. The personnel will be providing logistical and operational support at these sites, as opposed to enforcement or protection. The governor explaining the National Guard movement is being funded by state money. This comes as a decades-old rule requiring New York City to house the homeless is being contested in state court. Because of the 1981 ruling, the city of New York is required to house those who need shelter. However, amid the current influx of migrants, the city is asking for a court to change that ruling. The governor explaining the ruling makes caring for the homeless the responsibility of just the city, not the whole state.
This is going to come down to a very sophisticated constitutional question. We brought in outside constitutional experts to assist with managing this, because we believe, and I'm convinced, that the right to shelter is the result of a consent decree undertaken by the City of New York and Legal Aid Society back in 1979.
The governor's explaining that she is thankful for the leadership in New York City and will continue to support their effort with the migrants. Stick around. We'll be back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit. If you have a comment or story idea, please let us know about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter. We're there at WTEN. And finally, on Empire State Weekly, we are taking a closer look at the response to gun violence here in New York State. Lawmakers are continuing to work with communities to reduce statewide gun violence. Project Rise recently sending millions of dollars to cities to support grassroots mental health, mentoring, and victim services. Next week, we're going to hold a panel discussion with several community organizations receiving this money and how they are working to stop gun violence. For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray in Albany. We'll see you right here next week. And don't forget, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over the state. Here's a full schedule of Empire State Weekly on 10 television stations across this great state of New York.